IMHO Talk Show. Family, IMHO Talk Show. Sir Charles is here right now to continue the show for today. Bottom of the show, bottom of the hour. And Nino, what segment is it?
Word on the street.
That's right. The word on the street. And I am elated and delighted to be joined right now by none other than Cville's own, Cville's mayor, Juandiego Wade. Mayor Wade, how are you this afternoon?
Hello, Charles. It's a blessing to be here today on this lovely Sunday afternoon.
Lovely Sunday. And I got you indoors on this lovely Sunday afternoon. You probably don't appreciate that too much, do you?
Yeah. It's usually, of course, Sunday is different to do this, but this is a very popular show, and I'm glad to get the opportunity to come and share a few thoughts.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you for obliging as always. And because, for those who may not be aware, one, like we said, you are the mayor of the city of Charlottesville, and but most are aware that the big talk right now that's happening, that's going on amongst much as is normal for the city of Charlottesville, is a recent vote that got many in an uproar. A lot of misunderstanding and a lot of even offense was taken as it pertains to the Fifeville neighborhood, which is seen as a historically Black neighborhood. And, as in most places in Charlottesville, of course, sort of the sanctity and the imagery and the makeup of the neighborhoods are very near and dear to us. And so there's an article about Friends Over Cville tomorrow titled Fifeville Luxury Student Housing Project to Move Forward Despite Community Opposition. Right. So let's kind of start right there because Mayor Wade, like I've actually, of course, I got to be honest with you because, like you and I have a history. We go way back. Mm-hmm. But no, honestly, like when I first heard it, and I know it's a council vote, but when I heard your vote, like I was a little surprised. And I think some of the feedback given there on the city hall floor may have been somewhat a shock and somewhat surprised at first as well, right? But then I started looking into it in a little more as well. Not saying that my opinion on the vote necessarily has changed any, but I've talked to some folks too, and just different perspectives, right? Mm-hmm. Of being able to sit down civilly and kind of hashing out reasons and the potential benefits, right, as to why, and thinking about how development could be good, right? But at the same time, realizing how neighborhoods and citizens and people who are indigenous to here feel about their neighborhoods, on how it's a tricky balance.
Yes, sir.
It's a tricky balance. And when you have a history in Charlottesville that is such to where people feel like that they always are kind of getting the okie doke, like it always is like promises and just let us do this and then you'll get benefits from it, and people don't always see that. Yes, right. Sir. So it's understood. So, first question. So we had quite a few questions that came in from our audience when they heard that we were going to have this conversation. So one is, how did the city involve residents of this historically Black neighborhood in the decision-making process before approving the development?
Well, this project was largely by right. And the input that was done was during the approval for the zoning ordinance, the redoing of the zoning ordinance, which was probably a couple of years now. In December of 23, the zoning ordinance was approved, and then it went into effect in February of 24. Mm-hmm. And then we immediately had several lawsuits, and those lawsuits did not get approved, did not get settled and settled from them until I think November of 25. So we really, relatively speaking, still in the early stages of it. But the purpose of that zoning ordinance, which was years and years of input, was to increase the housing stock of all kinds. Because one of the reasons that Charlottesville is the most expensive place in the county, is the most expensive place in the state is to live is because we've severely, believe it or not, underbuilt over the last 50 years or so. We haven't had enough housing built, and therefore the renters, the apartment owners, or when you were selling homes, they're able to charge a lot of money because the stock is not there. And so that is what I ran on to one of the reasons is to address affordable housing. And I know people are saying, well, this quote luxury housing, student housing, but these students will be coming from somewhere, and many of them may be in the neighborhoods, they may be staying in other apartments, and they will move from those places, and those apartments and places will become available. And when you keep doing this, the housing stock, there'll be more housing stock out there, and they want just the ability to provide to raise prices and things, and won't be as strong. And I know this is, people are like, won't see it my way, but that's my approach. We in this particular project is primarily by right, and so, but yeah.
Gotcha. Now, that being said, let's clarify like a definition, because one way that it was explained to me is that the term student housing, in a lot of instances, is pertained to like the cost, right? So based on the affordability, of what's allotted to students, like in a college town, right? When somebody says student housing, or does that mean literally it is housing just for students?
No, it's not based on cost.
Okay.
But we understand that only students will likely be able to afford this, but it's based on they're probably going to be building it probably for the only people will be enjoy staying there would be students. But many of the older apartments is going to more traditional. These are like, is my understanding. Don't know the details. It's probably going to be like you get your room or suite, and there's maybe some mutual areas where you can, living room, maybe kitchen and things like that. So most families may not want that type of settings, but that's what the new student apartments are being built for. And they can charge, I'm thinking about when I was in college, and by the way, when I was here at UVA in grad school, I lived in this neighborhood. I lived in the fifeville neighborhood, so I know this neighborhood very well. Walk it all the time, and so I understand their concern. We need more housing, and that's the position that I'm coming from. I know everyone doesn't believe that, but one of the things that in my position, who's been deeply involved, Charles, in this community for the last, 35 years, being on the school board, nonprofit board, mentoring young people in this community, is that I can't base my decisions only on like what I hear at the city council meeting, because I've been involved with this community and to know that there's other voices out there. The voices that come to the meeting that come speak to us, that's certainly one part of it, but I know it's not all of it. And so you have to know your community strong and well enough to know, the whole picture. And I believe that I didn't run away to say, when I was running, to say, I don't want housing. This is not that is what I ran on. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's also should be understood that between the residents, viewpoint, as well as there was an independent board review that opposed it. Like, so how did that go into play, or why was the board review not taken into account when it came to the vote?
It was, and I think it's the BAR, and so I think that ultimately, I believe they, and regardless, the final decisions on these things has to come to the elected board, the elected city council, and that's us. We need to make those tough decisions, and we did. And so when things like that, the BAR, they may have looked at the different things, but ultimately we have to make those tough decisions, and we did. And it's not popular to some people, but you just have to, you don't get into politics in Charlottesville if you want to kind of skirt around and do everything easy. This doesn't work that way.
True. Now, the piece about that we hear a lot in Charlottesville, right? Because one thing we talk about is there's not a lot of, space. And so they talk about building up. Okay, so then when you talk about building up or building below ground where possible, but particularly building up, then you start messing with the landscape, of historic neighborhoods, and you block view, you block sun, that sort of thing. So one of the things that we're hearing is that in the neighborhood that is Fifeville, people seeing this as a high rise that even it just looks out of place.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the thoughts behind that as far as like the choice in approving this in this particular neighborhood and how that fits the aesthetics?
Right. Yeah. You just got to have the right design to do it. And I got my master's, my undergraduate in Norfolk State in urban planning, master's in urban planning from UVA. And so you can design things to fit into the neighborhood. And this is kind of a transition. If you think about Main Street, and then you transition railroad tracks, and then as you transition to the neighborhood, it's not going to be that type of zoning all the way through the entire neighborhood, but it is a transition, and we need density. I think it's people are not used to it, but that's the only way we can grow. We're 10.2 square miles, and that's it. If we want more housing, if we want to structurally address affordable housing, and we're doing this with many prongs. One is, of course, the zoning ordinance and improving these type of developments. Not all of them will get approved, but this one did. It was 3-2. But also the city of Charlottesville is leaning in heavily to address affordable housing, not just with words and deeds, but money. We put at least $10 million a year to address affordable housing. And that puts us the top per capita, definitely in the state, most likely in the East Coast. And I'm hearing different reports in the whole United States. So we're doing this, and this is like saving property, affordable housing. If you think about Dogwood Housing, about 80 homes there that we've purchased, that is going to be permanently affordable. We're leaning into the housing authority with the redevelopment of West Haven with over $15 million. With Kindlewood, we contribute to Habitat and AHIP. So these are things that we are doing, many approaches to address affordable housing.
Gotcha. Now affordable housing, that's another definition. How do you define affordable housing, and does that definition reflect what teachers, service workers, first responders, and working families in the city can actually afford?
Right. So it's a lot of different definitions, and 80% of the AMI, 30% so we are providing housing funding to address all of those, because you could be a teacher. I don't know, they make $70,000, entry level, maybe a UVA professor. I don't know if they're doing like 100, 150. It still will be difficult for them to buy a house in Charlottesville, in certain parts of Albemarle County, because the stock is just not there. And so particularly you heard about the missing middle. That's what we don't have in Charlottesville. We have some wealthy homes and we're leaning in with low wealth, and affordable housing like Kindlewood and the Housing Authority, South First Street. All of those are projects that the city has leaned into. What we don't have is that those homes that are in the middle, and those are things that a new zoning ordinance will address. And so, Charles, there could be in some cases where the kids that may be moving to this new Marks, that they may be renting several homes now, and they're like, they got this new building in the house that they're in. The owner may try to rent it to other students, but it may not, and say, we're going to bring this back to rent to families, or what we might want to call permanent or local residents. So but we have to keep doing things like that. It may be some more traditional apartments or some condos and things. We just need all different types of housing to address the affordable housing issue in Charlottesville.
Yep. We are talking to Mayor Juandiego Wade of the city of Charlottesville, and Mayor Wade, and I think that we are like sort of constantly sort of like poking at a lot of the issues, but of course a lot of times like some answers just generate more questions, especially when it's a very when it's a long history, right, of certain things. So because what I'm hearing a lot is that people just want to know that they're protected, right? And I think sometimes when there's answers that are given of of how this ultimately is going to make something better. When, when a lot of folks are saying, but like we need something to afford right now, and this is being built. I can't afford this right now, right? So a question would be, like, can you explain, like what protections are in place to prevent displacement? Because people think about, okay, this is going to be gentrification. Then my taxes and stuff are going to go up around here, and I'm going to get pushed out. Also like how this project benefits people, who already live in the neighborhood.
Right. So again, this particular project is not going to move. There's no homes there other than the ones they're going to protect. But just generally speaking, we are building or helping. The city of Charlottesville is not a construction company, so we're not building houses ourselves, affordable housing, but we are providing funding to Piedmont Housing Authority, to the Alliance, and to the Housing Authority to help to provide more affordable housing. I mean, I'm thinking of a project like Kindlewood, which previously had 150 units. And when it's done, it's going to have a 400 or 500 there, more density, but it's also going to have a child care center there, a space there for incubation and businesses and things. So we are doing things to make this city open to all of our residents. And again, it's just not what we're saying on council meetings and on radio shows. We're putting money behind it, real money behind it.
Yeah. And somebody chimed in online as well, saying that the average for teachers here actually starts at $55,000. So that's makes it even more difficult, to the point that you made a minute ago. And like the UVA and the whole like tax-free thing, like I understand that there's some college towns to where there is some sort of kickback that the towns get for the universities to be able to take up so much space, like within their area. Like, does that conversation come up in these talks as well when we talk about student housing, or how UVA could be giving back more?
Yeah. So, this project like the Marks, that's not something that the University of Virginia or i.e. the Commonwealth of Virginia is building. It's private. But we have had those conversations. We've had it over the years with the University of Virginia to pilot payment in lieu of taxes. They have not done that. They say they're doing other things. We've continued to have those conversations. That is a political thing. We're still continuing to try to do things at the state level, but we can't make them pay. And we're not, as a city, we need to continue to try to do what we can to address affordable housing. We're not just going to sit and, suck our thumb and say, why. We have to continue to move on to try to address affordable housing and other issues. Of course, we want UVA to pay more, but, Charles, I'm a doer, man. We continue to ask them, and we have different forums that, with whether it's the city manager, us, with asking the president, but at this point they've said no, and they're doing A, B, and C. We have to move on as a city, not move on, I should say, but continue to operate the city, move the city. We can't say, well, you know what, we can't do anything because UVA is not paying us.
Gotcha.
It just doesn't work that way.
It's moving on from there. Would it be fair to say that this project could potentially reflect Kindlewood? The way that Kindlewood is placed within, that neighborhood downtown. Is it?
I'm not sure what you mean. Reflect
like as far as the space that it takes, or like as far as the building being higher than the others, things like that. Is that?
Yeah, I really
that been discussed.
Yeah, I don't think that Kindlewood is much larger. I'm trying to think of the space. Yeah, it's much larger, and there's several buildings there as part of Kindlewood, and as I recall, this project is going to be one building.
Yeah. Because someone that chimed in as well as I often think about why terms like gentrification has to be a bad word, and what I mean by that is that a lot of times there's opportunities, and just since historically people of color weren't allowed within those spaces, now I feel like we just assume that we can't benefit from growth and development. how do we change that mindset systematically as a city for everybody to know that when development comes, that should mean more opportunity? Or is that a fallacy? Is there not actually opportunity for people of color?
So I understand people's concern about it. I was a graduate student at UVA from 88 to 90. And I lived, as I said, in Fifeville. And I recall when I was a student here, because I didn't have any plans of staying in this community, but the Lord had different plans for me. But I recall some little controversy because they would not deliver food to the 10th and Page, and I believe the Fifeville neighborhood, of course, and because I was, quote, the hood, and it wasn't deemed as safe, and if you look at it now, and it wasn't like I tell people it's not like I went to grad school with Thomas Jefferson. It wasn't like, in 200 years ago. It's like 35, 40 years ago. And so a lot has changed. And now and now those neighborhoods are some of the more desirable neighborhoods. And of course, we want mixed neighborhoods, but you shouldn't be forced to leave a neighborhood because you can't afford it or you don't feel welcome in there. And that's what, again, we're trying to create that environment that Charlottesville is welcome to everyone.
Yeah. And when with the development being that it is in a neighborhood, right? It's not just for the people who are going to inhabit this particular structure that's going to be erected. Is there potential of like neighborhood resources to be a part of this? Like whether you're talking about, it could be childcare, it could be laundromats, things like that. Because it's going to be a part of the neighborhood. It's just not a developer. It's going to be siloed.
Right.
Yeah.
What I would like is that I can't recall all of the things that they're going to provide for the students inside, but one of the things that I think that they can do or should do is to connect with the Fifeville Neighborhood Association and part of their grocery store co-op. And if if you can say these students or a part of that, I think that would definitely make that the food co-op a lot stronger. And we know that has not been easy to get off the ground, that the co-op, but when you could potentially infuse hundreds or more people to be part of that, and that they could walk down to shop there or to have it delivered, whatever it may be, then I think that can be an addition, a plus as part of this development.
Yeah, which is a whole nother conversation we got to have you back on, right? Because when it comes to the food co-op, that's right. It's like, how did we get this far and we just now realize that the land is not suitable?
Yeah,
there's a lot of questions around that.
Yes.
But I guess the conversation for another day.
Yes, sir.
But we have been talking to the neighborhood association and folks there as well, trying to get to the root of that.
And again, Charles, even in for that project, that is another project that the county has leaned into as well, because that development, if you think of where the IGA is, and when I was in grad school, I walked 2 blocks to do all of my grocery shopping there. But that is going to be, music resourcing is going to be there. The grocery store is planned to be there, and hopefully will be. But also, 70, 80 affordable housing, deeply affordable, that the city has leaned in heavily for that project as well. And these are things that we do all the time that, we don't have a ribbon cutting on it, but without the city support, those projects would not be able to take place. And we wanted to continue to work with Piedmont Housing for the housing part of that, and the co-op for the grocery store part of it. So that's something that we're not taking the lead on, but we're supporting the neighborhood association and the co-op board for that. Yeah.
And did I hear you correctly that you mentioned the county? The county plays a part?
So if I said that the county, they not for that project, but they are, it's my understanding, they are putting more towards affordable housing as well. Okay. In my belief, to also, because the county is just Albemarle County, I'm sorry, the city of Charlottesville is doing so much. And if you just look across the border, it's like we're doing so much. And so I think that probably put pressure on the county to say, you know what, we can step up to the plate and do a little bit more. But that benefits the whole community when it's affordable for the city and the county to live in.
Yeah. And hearing what you said too, so is the issue with the zoning for that co-op specifically for the grocery store that's problematic right now, but the other work can continue, or is everything on hold?
That's to be determined.
Okay.
And, we can come back on this. My understanding is that the way that they deliver groceries and things now, that to get rid of the trash and to have deliveries, they need a certain space. And you certainly, you can bring in smaller trucks and things, but that may have an impact on the cost. And I'm sure that the Co-op Board Association is looking at all of that, and they know that we're here to support them in any way that we can.
Yeah. We are with Mayor Wade, and Mayor Wade, ultimately with all these questions that we have and that's coming in, I think it's commitments, right? Is what people really need, because when we think about ways to reconcile claims, maybe of equity and inclusion, as it pertains to the city of Charlottesville. And so when people feel like that they're on board and they have and they vote in committed, council members or whoever their public representatives are, it's, things are going to be, sort of taken with a grain of salt. But then when they believe, it is a very fine line, right? To be able for folks to say, here's what we're asking for, right? But we, are told that there's other things that have to take place first, so it's a hard, pill to swallow sometimes. And the level of communication, which is why we thank you for being here, because the level of communication is just so utterly important.
Yes.
And I know where some people may not, get, but the parliamentary procedures, which I don't agree with, but I understand the procedures of a council meeting. And it does get frustrating when everybody's sort of straight faced and it's like just business protocol. And it's like, okay, we heard you, now we're on to the next topic, right? Because then it feels like you're not being heard. But it is also sort of part of the procedure. So again, just the level of commitment and people knowing that their space, right? A lot of times that they've inherited and things like that they want to know that it's protected.
Yes. And so I understand that during council meetings, it's rare that we get public comment. We usually get at least 16 people at the beginning, and then we have opportunity at the end. We value that input, but we don't use that meeting to respond to each one, because the meetings would really be much longer. It's just not the forum as well, because we may not have the answers right then. But on any given week, any given day, I'll probably get, 50 to 75 email, and as mayor, it's my duty to responsibility and duty to respond to them. And I tried to respond to all of them. So our engagement with the community is very strong, and it's important that people feel like they've been heard.
Yes, sir. And when we think about the makeup of the town, so we have indigenous folks, and folks have strong opinions about students that just come in who may be very transient, and so a lot of times they don't have real buy-in to the community, that they're temporarily taking up space. But when you think about the development of Charlottesville, right, knowing that majority of students are going to be transient, what does the future of it look like? How do you envision it? Do you want more young families to be here? Do you want it to be more professionals? Do you want folks who are from here to stay here?
Right.
How do we blend that?
You mentioned indigenous people. You assume you're not referring to the Monacan Indians, the original.
Oh no, I wasn't. You're not the OG indigenous, but
gosh,
like the Charlottesville indigenous.
Right. That's a great question. What I envision, and won't be during my lifetime on council, but I would like to see a city of Charlottesville that's a place where there's a more thriving kind of middle class resident. And it's a place where, if you are a service worker making entry level $15 to $25 an hour, that is a place for you here as well. Because I think that makes the whole community so much stronger when you have a wide diverse. I'm thinking about the neighborhood I grew up in, Richmond, Virginia, where is the north side and then later the south side, where in my block you could have a doctor and a dentist and someone who made a mechanic, or my father was a teacher. My mother was a worked for the Virginia Extension Office and stayed home with the kid. So a wide range. And so I could see everything growing up, in my neighborhood. And I think that in the city of Charlottesville, I want to be able to see that wide breadth of all, income levels to be able to live, work, and play within the city of Charlottesville.
So, next question is going to be, but how, right? And I think one of the hows that people would like to hear more like concrete answers on is, okay, if the developers are being allowed to come in and make money in spaces where landlords can charge the maximum possible, why can't there at least be a guaranteed kickback of you're making money there? So can't you subsidize some housing where we can make it a little more affordable, right? Affordable for those people that you just mentioned, right? Like service industry folks. Right.
And so,
like, can that be mandated? Like within developers clauses.
We do have part of the zoning ordinance where you're required to provide affordable housing, and whether it's paying into a fund or being part of that development, that is something that we do now as part of the zoning ordinance before, and definitely part now. That infusion of funds allowed us to purchase Carlton Mobile Home Park, which was something that we didn't have on the radar, but we had to quickly come up with, I think, $8 or $9 million with Zero High Street project, with Dogwood, those things, which was, I think, $5 or $6 million. So those funds allow us to help preserve those funds and to provide the $15 million that we're going to give to at least $15 million to the housing authority for the redevelopment of West Haven and what we've given to South. So those things that, those funds that, we put aside as part of the taxpayers' money, but also money that we get from development as part of that. And so this is the United States. It's okay to make a profit, and so
this is definitely not an isolated issue either.
Yeah.
And you can look at the news, and unfortunately it is happening everywhere. Like, just controlling costs is an issue.
Yes. Yeah.
Unfortunately, we live in the blue dot in the red South, as they call it.
Yes.
So that means we're just expected to do business different.
Yes.
It kind of is what it is, comes with the territory. But lastly, what I have for you then is the bigger picture, and you can leave, with your final words.
Yes.
But just the living wage issue in general, right? Like, how can the city expect population growth and community stability when residents are spending unsustainable portions of their income on things like housing, but on everything right now?
Yeah. Well, we need to provide more opportunities and for people to make more money. And we have, as a city, we're doing a lot to provide training, to have different programs. But also, I spent my last 15 years in employment, helping individuals get jobs, bringing companies into town, helping individuals in community get jobs. And part of that is providing a good, strong education. That's why we support Charlottesville City Schools so much, and being able to help kids with go to college or to further their education, whether it's in the tech field or the trades, is to provide those opportunities, because you don't have to go to college to be able to thrive in this new economy, but you always need to get additional training, additional knowledge to be able to thrive in this new economy.
Gotcha. Yes. So, Mayor Wade, any other closing words, final words? Yeah, I definitely appreciate your time. Hopefully the people got majority of their questions answered.
Yeah.
And the folks, and you said your lines are always open. So final words, how folks can reach you in your office.
Yes. My email address is real easy, wadej@charlottesville.gov, wadej@charlottesville.gov. And just want to thank you for this opportunity to come and share my thoughts. I'm happy to come back anytime.
Thank you, Mayor Wade.